Welcome to A Slice with Dice, where education meets inspiration and leadership meets real life. I'm Corey Alderdice, Executive Director of the Arkansas School for Mathematics, Sciences, and the Arts. With 2 decades in school leadership, I'll share what I've learned from walking the tightrope between policy and practice, especially when it comes to doing right by gifted students and their futures. Ready to dive in? Here's this week's Slice. There's a story that plays out in households across the country every year. A valedictorian with perfect grades, sky-high test scores, and a resume full of leadership roles in community service gets a rejection letter from the school their family assumed was a sure thing. Not from an Ivy, not from Harvard or Princeton, but from Vanderbilt or maybe Duke, WashU, Emory, Northwestern. And the first reaction is usually confusion, followed quickly by disbelief and then, let's be honest, frustration. Because for so long, schools like these were seen as the next best thing. Not quite Ivy, but close. Maybe a solid plan B if the dream school didn't work out. But somewhere along the way, and I'd argue it's been happening slowly, quietly, and very intentionally over the past 15 years, that idea of a second-tier school stopped making sense. These institutions are not second-tier, not in academic rigor, not in national reputation, and definitely not in admission selectivity. The phrase a lot of people are using these days is new Ivies. They are the schools that used to be overlooked or considered regional, but are now just as competitive, and in some cases more competitive than their Ivy League counterparts. Vanderbilt's acceptance rate last year dipped below 6%. WashU and Rice are hovering around 9%. These are not fallback schools. They are the front runners. But why? What changed? Well, some of it's basic math. More students are applying to more colleges than ever before. The Common App, test optional policies, and digital recruitment tools have flattened the playing field. A student from California can apply to Tulane or Emory with the same ease as a student in Georgia. Geographic barriers are dissolving, and application numbers have exploded as a result. But the shift isn't just about volume. It's also about strategy on the part of both the students and the schools. You see, today's elite colleges aren't just building classes, they're building brands. They want to be seen as national or even global institutions. And that means cultivating prestige. It means admitting not just high achievers, but students who will go out into the world and reflect back that prestige. Students who will start companies, win fellowships, give TED Talks, and make headlines for all the right reasons. The kind of students whose success stories make the alumni magazine practically write itself. And here's the key thought I want to land on this week. Admissions officers aren't grading a test. They're casting a play. Now, that's something most students maybe don't realize when they hit submit on their applications. They imagine a panel of people, red pens in hand, checking off boxes. GPA? Check. Test scores? Check. AP classes? Check. Leadership roles? Check. But that's not how it works. Not at the top levels. These schools aren't filling out a spreadsheet. They're assembling a cast. And that means they're not just asking, is this student good enough? They're asking, do we already have someone like this? If you're the president of your school's National Honor Society and the captain of the debate team, hey, that's fantastic. But if the school already has 10 or tens of students just like you in the admit pile, they may decide they don't need the 11th. Especially if there's another applicant with a completely different story, someone whose experience, interest, or perspective brings something new to the table. And this is where things get tricky because it's not about being the best, it's about being the best fit. So what does that mean for high school seniors who are just now getting serious about their college applications? Well, first, It means that the old playbook doesn't guarantee success. You can check all the right boxes and still get passed over, not because you did anything wrong, but because you were too similar to someone else who hit submit earlier, or because the school had a different need that year, and that's hard to hear, but it's true. Second, it means that trying to be well-rounded in the traditional sense may actually not help you stand out. In fact, it can do the opposite. A broad resume filled with a little bit of everything might look good on paper, but you see, admissions officers are looking for shape, direction, purpose. They want to see depth, what makes you tick, what you care about, what kind of person you're becoming. And third, and maybe most importantly, it means that your story matters more than ever. The most compelling applications don't just show what you've done, they help the reader understand why you did it. What drove you to start that community garden? What kept you coming back to the robotics lab on weekends? What did you learn while working at the animal shelter or building that podcast or tutoring kids in your neighborhood? Colleges, especially the new Ivies, want students who are already on a path, even if it's early. They want students who are driven by curiosity, not competition. Students who ask big questions, follow them wherever they lead, and can explain why it all matters. And that's what makes this process feel so frustrating to so many students and families, because on paper, the student did everything right. But in the end, this isn't just about stats. It's about story and cast and character. So if you're a senior getting ready to apply, here's what I want you to hear. Don't chase prestige, chase clarity. Figure out what matters to you and follow it. Dig deep instead of wide. Write the essays that only you could write, and choose the schools that feel like a true fit. Not just for their name, but for their values, their culture, their community. And maybe most of all, don't dismiss a school just because it wasn't on your radar 5 years ago. Today's admissions landscape is shifting fast, and the idea of a backup school is becoming less and less useful. Because if you're applying to a place like Vanderbilt, Rice, or WashU, you're in the deep end, just like everyone else. Getting in is hard. Getting rejected doesn't mean you weren't good enough. It means they were casting a play. And this year, they were looking for someone else. So write the role that only you can play. And trust that the right stage will find you. A Slice with Dice is a production of Aldercube. Thanks for making time to reflect with me. If you're finding value in these episodes, I hope you'll subscribe and help spread the word. Until next week, lead boldly, listen closely, and keep pushing forward. I'll see you then.